News Central now at this hour begins at the Senate, where the ousted chief whip of the 10th National Assembly, Senator Mohammed Ali Ndume, has declined an offer from the APC to serve as chairman of the Senate Committee on Tourism. The federal lawmaker broke the silence while briefing journalists at his Maiduguri residence, saying, having reviewed the conversation that prompted his ouster, his action did not warrant a sack. News Central's Umari Karawa reports that Senator Ndume also called on Nigerians to pray for unity and progress, urging steadfast support for the nation's leadership during these challenging times. To security matters, now the multinational Joint Task Force said it has witnessed a substantial surrender of 263 Boko Haram terrorists and their families in the Sector 1, Cameroon, from July 10 to 17, 2024. A statement signed by the Chief Military Public Information Officer, Headquarters MNJTF in Jamena in Chad, Lieutenant Colonel Abubakar Abdullahi, on Friday. He said the wave of surrender started on July 11, 2024, when 5 terrorists surrendered to MNJTF troops in Wulgo, Nigeria-Cameroon border. Preliminary information indicated these individuals hailed from Tumbuma and Kutungula in Mate local government area in Nigeria. According to the statement, preliminary investigation also revealed that all the surrendered individuals are Nigerians. To labor matters now, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has approved 70,000 naira as the new minimum wage for Nigerian workers, with a promise to review the wage every 3 years. President Tinubu also promised to find ways to assist the private sector and state governments to pay their wages. This was at a meeting with leaders of the organized labor unions comprising the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress at the State House in the nation's capital, Abuja. Nigeria's Minister of Information made this known to State House correspondents in Abuja.
Happy to announce today that both the federal government and the organized labor have agreed on an increase on the 62,000 naira minimum wage. The new national minimum wage that we expect Mr. President to submit to the National Assembly for legislation is 70,000 naira. But that is not all. There is also a boost, like Mr. President has assured, in ensuring that massive investment is going to be made in the area of infrastructure. There is also a deepening of the investment of the federal government in renewable energy. More money is going to go into the acquisition of more buses, the CNG buses. Nigeria is going to be more CNG compliant, according to the president. We are moving in this transition to renewable. And all other things that Mr. President has assured labor, the issue of SANU and NASU is also going to be looked at. And we are happy, we are very thankful of the role that the organized labor has done today.
Mr. President assured all Nigerians that he's their president and would not disappoint, and he has shown that this afternoon. Recall that Labour saw Mr. President last week, and they asked that you should give them 1 week to consult more. And of course, at the end of the day, the consultation came very fruitful because Mr. President said he has to be a father, that it's not issue of law who is right or who will blink the first, that he is our father, like he always said.
The good thing about it is that we will not wait for another 5 years to come and review. Rather than accepting on a figure that you wait for 5 years, it's like you have to now negotiate even 2 times within 5 years with a view to going up. That is one of the reasons, why we decided to reach where we are today, because of the proviso that, you can review them.
In the meantime, the National Assembly is set to receive an executive bill on the new national minimum wage on Tuesday, following an agreement between Presidents Bola Tinubu and labor leaders for higher worker remuneration. This is according to the Special Advisor to President Tinubu on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, who confirmed that the lawmakers would receive the executive bill on the new minimum wage by Tuesday to ensure the agreement is legally binding and ready for implementation. Earlier, a public affairs analyst, Dotun Ojon, spoke to us on the news about this development.
Of running a business in Nigeria today, it's become extremely difficult. And in Nigeria, for instance, we have about 25 modular refinery. About 10 of them are working. But in the past few months, they've been finding it difficult even to get forex, to be able to get crude. So the private sector is finding it a bit difficult to run business in Nigeria today. So to consider them is actually a big thing. And if you look at the percentage of people really that are in government payroll, you discover that the chunk of the people that will benefit from minimum wage are actually from the private sector. So it makes a lot of sense that we are not just hovering around figures. It makes a lot of sense that we are not just being adamant on a figure. It makes a lot of sense that we are bringing everybody within the discussion community together to be able to achieve this. So for the private sector, I actually support the government on that.
To discuss this, we are joined by a legal practitioner and a public affairs analyst, Olayinka Aliru. Olayinka, thank you so much for joining us on the news.
Good morning. Thank you for... Good afternoon, sorry. It's morning where I am.
Okay.
Thank you for having me on the program.
Understandably, we understand. Now, how does this new minimum wage align with existing economic policies and goals in Nigeria, especially in terms of inflation and economic growth?
Well, thank you very much. So for me, I'll start from the point of view of considering that this is something, we move from one point to get to where we are now. So like the saying goes, have a loaf is better than nothing. However, having said that, looking at the current economic realities of the country, the increment for me is really nothing to celebrate. There is nothing to rejoice about, considering that, the last statistics from the Bureau of Statistics showed that the current inflation rate is about 34%. And in addition to that, the current economy as it is, it's a highly dollarized economy, meaning that most of the articles that are consumed within the country are imported from abroad. So putting all of this into perspective, if you do a rough conversion of this amount of 70,000 that the government is proposing, it leaves you about $46 for workers to sustain on in a month. I mean, let's get very serious here. So for me, it's really nothing to celebrate either by the only people that are celebrating. I've seen the pictures of the meeting between the labor leaders and the government, and as far as I'm concerned, the only people that are happy about this development are the labor leaders and the government officials for reasons best known to them. So, but again, it is something at the end of the day. It will bring some sort of belief to the workers, but looking at the long term, I mean, with all the other challenges existing within the country, the power situation is nothing to write home about. The infrastructure is highly deficient within the country. So all of this put together, it's really not, it's nothing to celebrate as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, looking at the current exchange is about $42 to $43 if we are to put the 70,000 naira in perspective. But then for you, when it comes to implementation now of this minimum wage, fine, you've said that there's nothing to celebrate or to write home about. But then when it comes to implementation, what are the challenges that you think, sectors and regions will face across board in Nigeria, both from the federal to the subnational to the private sectors too?
Yeah, I'm very glad that you brought this particular issue up, because as we all know, Nigeria is a federal state. So the fact that the federal government has reached an agreement with labor does not necessarily mean that all the states are bound by this. And again, even if there is an understanding that this should be implemented across board, you have to consider the economic realities of many of the states. I mean, we have a lot of states in Nigeria that are currently owing workers arrears of many months in salary. That was when the minimum wage is 30,000 naira. So now with this increment and the way it usually operates, when there's an increase of minimum wage like this, there's a corresponding increment across all levels within the civil service. So with states that are currently in salary, to what extent can we say confidently that they'll be able to pay this minimum wage? And now that is even leaving the government circle. If you go into the private sector, how many organizations with the current economic realities, with all the challenges of paying for power every day, inflation, cost of living crisis, high cost of production and all of that, how many organizations can afford to pay this minimum wage? And then there is another issue that I am usually concerned about in situations like this, in terms of enforcement and implementation. So the previous minimum wage of 30,000 naira, could we say confidently that across all states of the federation, that is going to the private sector now, that all employers of labor were paying the 30,000 naira as then as the minimum wage? So now with this increment, is there any guarantee from the government that would ensure that private sector employers are able to pay this amount? So these are issues that I think labor should really be more concerned about. But most often from experience, it is usually the situation that when people talk about minimum wage, they are usually fixated on government paying salary. But the truth of the matter is that the private sector is also a very component aspect of the Nigerian economy. And to that extent, if there is no procedures in place to ensure that the minimum wage is enforced across board, then it leaves a lot of issues for consideration.
Well, we've also seen the House of Reps yesterday coming out to say that they'll be slashing their salaries by 50%, giving about 300,000 naira per month, approximately 648 million naira for 6 months to actually boost food security in the country and deal with the issue around cost of living crisis in the country. Do you think that would anyway placate the situation as it affects Nigerians moving forward?
Well, with due respect to the National Assembly, I think they should really get serious. And I'm saying this because as Nigerians, we know, we see every time and we hear every time in the news the things that go on in the National Assembly. Now, let's leave the salary on one side. What about the allowances? Because for the National Assembly members, that is where the bulk of their pay comes from. You know, we see every year the amount of money they vote for car allowance, newspaper allowance, furniture allowance, all sorts of allowances, aids, and all of that, you know. So if your salary is just like a fraction, a negligible fraction of your total earning, and you're saying that you're forgoing half of that, while the humongous amount that you collect every month as allowances, really.
But the allowances are running costs. It's to help them run their office. You know, they have multiple aides that work with them that they need to pay.
Well, yeah, I agree with you on that they need to run their offices. But looking at the lifestyle of the elected leaders, legislators, the kind of opulent lifestyle that they live, can we really say that the amount of money that they vote every year as the allowances, can we really say that it is justified in relation to the economic realities of the country? Now, just last year, they took delivery, was in the news that they took delivery of SUVs, the average cost of which was about 160 million naira or more, even for senators. So can we say that is justified, even if they have to run their offices?
So invariably, you are calling for, invariably, you are calling for austerity measures across board, across the 3 tiers of government, or let's say the 2 tiers of government, if you're hoping to have enough fiscal cash to run the administration. Is that what you mean?
Exactly, if that is what will solve the situation of the problems of this country. Because again, if you are talking about the legislators, we shouldn't also forget the executive themselves. I mean, it's in the news recently that the the controversy about the acquisition of a new private jet for our president. And it was reported in some news media that the jet has been procured already for about 250, the conversion rate to Naira is about 150 billion Naira.
Okay.
Now, looking at all of this happening, so it is very difficult to accept that 70,000 Naira is the best that the government can come up with as minimum wage. Again, if you look at, like I mentioned, the conversion rate, which you also even corrected me, I said it was about $56. You said it should come to about $42. I mean, where I live abroad, the people you will categorize as the lowliest of workers make more than this in a couple of hours in one day. So really,
okay. Well, it means the country still has a long way to go when it comes to minimum wage and what is payable. Thank you so much, Olayinka Eleru, for joining us to talk about this.
You're very much welcome.
You're watching News Central now. We'll go on a very short break. We'll have more stories for you when we return. Don't go away. Many thanks for being there. Let's now give you an update on the situation in Benin, the capital of Edo State, where what would have been an entirely joyous event turned bloody. 2 persons were reported to have been shot dead during the reception for the deputy governor of the state, Philip Shaibu, who was earlier this week reinstated by the courts. Large crowd of supporters had gathered at the Benin airport to receive Shaibu and the APC governorship candidate, Senator Monday Okwebolo. Reports say the gathering was attacked by armed thugs who fired gunshots, leading to the death of police personnel and another supporter of the deputy governor. Available video shows the crowd processing on the streets with a lifeless body in the open van. Edo State will be voting in a very heated governorship election on November 21 after the deputy governor had failed to emerge as a candidate. Police say investigations have commenced into the circumstances surrounding the shooting and killing on Thursday. Meanwhile, a chieftain of the Nigeria's ruling All Progressives Congress and former member of the House of Representatives has accused the Edo State governor of victimizing his deputy, Philip Shaibu, saying the impeachment, which was recently voided by the Federal High Court in Abuja, was a political witch hunt. The former lawmaker and current director of contacts of the APC Governorship Campaign Council in Edo State says that the ordeal of the former deputy governor is a show of political intolerance and intimidation by the governor, and urged citizens of Edo State to reject this display of dictatorship during the upcoming governorship poll.
The deputy governor, Philip Shaibu, that impeachment has all the trappings of political intolerance, political intimidation, an act that was calculated to subject the young man to the whims and caprices of the emperors that have taken the state by its jugular. If you look at the accusations against Philip Shaibu, which were the grounds upon which the esteemed House of Assembly, where we served, at the threshold of this republic, found itself grappling for evidences and offenses against the deputy governor in order to be able to impeach him. And the evidences they could gather was that the deputy governor, Philip Shaibu, revealed official secrets, government secrets. The deputy governor, Philip Shaibu, lied on oath. With the greatest respect to the Edo State House of Assembly and its leadership, that has brought the image, the integrity, and of course, the sanctity with which that People's Assembly was held in the past to an all-time low.
To discuss this, we're joined by a legal practitioner, Dennis Osaratin. Dennis, thank you so much for joining us on the news.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
So first, what do you make of the shooting incident at the Benin airport yesterday and the resultant casualty?
Yeah, of course, just like every other person, it's a thing of a very rude shock because no life, no blood is spilled in the desperation of a few persons who wants to get into power through the back door. It is quite unfortunate, and the shootings and killings should be condemned by all peace-loving people of Edo State.
Well, it's been about 24 hours. The governor of the state has not actually even come out to condemn such heinous acts. So do you think that the armed thugs who attacked the gathering and, of course, the deputy governor were politically motivated?
I don't quite agree with you that the government have not come out to condemn it. This morning, of course, I saw on the very international, on some very reputable platforms where the essay to the governor on media, project and communications came out clearly to condemn such acts and call the authority, the police, the DSS to swing into action and bring those who were seen in the video chanting war songs and threatening fire and brimstone, to bring them to justice. So it will not be correct to say that the government have not come out to condemn. The government have actually come out to condemn.
Well, I was actually referring to the governor, knowing fully well that the attack was on the person of his deputy.
The governor acts through his delegates of power, his delegatees. So if the essay on media has come out to speak on behalf of the government, that should for now suffice.
Okay, all right. Now, the incident resulted in the death of a police personnel and a supporter of the deputy governor. So what message does this send to the people of Edo State? Because we know that the governorship election is coming up in the next few months. Preparations are on the way, and we're having situations like this occur in the states.
You are the one alleging now that one supporter of the APC candidate was murdered. The only information that I have seen from some other reputable news observation is that a serving police officer was gunned down by the thugs that was mobilized by the former deputy governor of Edo State. That should be the news. It's very condemnable. Why should a policeman be harmed, be hacked down in such a manner by these banned, bloodthirsty thugs? So we should be able to place blame where it is. The person who mobilized those people to the airport should be the one to be called to answer these questions. So anybody who have been killed is quite unfortunate, but I don't also think we should be missing words in calling out those who were at the forefront of bringing those thugs from the airports.
Well, we actually said that armed thugs and a supporter of the deputy governor, not particularly of any political party. So,
I'm not aware of any supporter, but I can tell you that I saw in the news that a policeman was shot dead, and that act is condemnable. And we are again calling on the police authority in Edo State to swing into action,
of course,
and arrest all those who were seen in the video chanting war songs. They should be arrested by now and investigated thoroughly. And that's the way it should be.
Well, we know that investigations are underway according to the police in the states. But then, with this incident, what does it say about the security architecture and situation in Edo State, if you are going to be very categorical?
Again, this further accentuates or gives support to all those who have been calling for the establishment of a state police. Because I can tell you for free, if the governor of the state was actually in charge of the police yesterday, some of the shenanigans that happened yesterday wouldn't have happened. It's unfortunate that the commissioner of police was even at the airport. He saw some of these things that was happening, and they couldn't arrest, not even a single person was arrested yesterday. That is not unfortunate. And the police should be called to action. They must swing into action and ensure that Edo State, being a peace-loving state, must remain peaceful pre- and post-elections. We've had elections before in this state, and election is not war. So nobody should bring down the roof simply because they want to get to Zaribe Avenue by hook or by crook.
Okay, Dennis Osaritin, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the news. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me, and God bless those states.
Amen. Let's move on now. The governor of Imo State, Senator Hope Uzodinma, has delivered a public lecture titled "Where Are the Nigerians?" a discourse on patriotism and citizenship. Speaking in front of other governors, top traditional monarchs, and many other notable guests, Uzodinma drew from different surveys conducted and arrived at the conclusion that though Nigerians could be seen as patriotic, their government needs to do more for the people if it expects the people to do more for it. News Central's Bernard Akede filed in this report from the lecture.
Senator Hope Uzodinma the governor of Imo State, accompanied by his Lagos State counterpart, Babajide Sanwo-Olu. His task here was to speak on patriotism. Setting the premise for the lecture, the Imo State governor first acknowledged the president's decision to revert to Nigeria's former national anthem, stating that the verses speak of patriotism.
The issue of patriotism among citizens is currently on the front burner of conversations on how countries can overcome their challenges and attain greatness. This may have informed the decision of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR, who recently urged the Ministry of Information and National Orientation to find ways to raise the feelings of patriotism among Nigerians.
Basing his statements on the results drawn from various statistical data analyzing a sample of Nigerians, Uzodimma explained that it was worrisome to know that not many Nigerians were willing to go to war for or die for the country.
We administered an online survey, and a total of 1,670 people of different ages and levels of education responded. That is noticed for those who are willing to go to war for Nigeria. Of the sample population, 64% of the respondents said they will not be prepared to go to war for Nigeria. Only 36% are ready to do so. This implies that many Nigerian citizens, more than half the population, are not willing to die for their country.
With practical examples that the audience could relate to, the governor was able to show that Nigeria does not seem to create a level playing field for citizens, thus making patriotism a difficult ask. He urged the government to show more concern for the citizens if it wanted the citizens to be more patriotic.
We need to create enough space for everyone to thrive, and this should emphasize merit. Herein comes the need to take another look at our federal project, which in my view is currently skewed. We need to create sufficient space for all tribes and tongues in the land to thrive without impeding the speed or space of order. This is why the need to rejig our federal project may be inevitable. If we do, we would have gone a long way in addressing the root of the palpable despair of a good number of our people who have lost confidence.
While Governor Uzodimma's lecture could unanimously be likened to a doctorate thesis, the expectations will be that his recommendations are implemented so as to foster patriotism. In Lagos for News Central, I'm Bernard Akede.
Let's now tell you that operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, have intercepted 7 containers bearing 1,229,400 bottles of codeine syrup worth over 9,835,200,000 naira at the Port Harcourt Ports Complex in Onne, River State. This is coming barely 3 weeks after seizing 6,125 cartons of some same substance worth over 7,350 million naira at the Onne port. Spokesperson of the NDLEA, Femi Babafemi, made this known in a statement on Friday, saying that the latest seizure, which was made on Thursday, is the 4th and last set of such consignments that have been under the watch list of the agency. Away from that, electronic waste describes discarded electrical or electronic devices. This is a major waste that people usually don't talk about, but Lagos State is talking and taking steps to put it far ahead of other states in Nigeria and countries in sub-Saharan Africa in terms of the management of electronic waste and converting them to wealth. News Central's correspondent Bettina Nbeli reports.
Lagos, a city thriving with technological advancements and a growing population, faces a huge challenge in handling electronic waste or e-waste. E-waste is one of the fastest growing waste streams in the world, and Lagos is no exception, as discarded electronics can pose serious environmental and health risks if not managed properly.
For us as a state to handle our waste. But if you handle your waste positively, you are fixing the global ecosystem as per the environment. And municipal waste is key. Electronic waste is key. We're not talking about it. But it's an integral part of the waste system. And I'm glad we did a lot of projects with Netherlands. Harvest waste is taking up a major leg of it for us. That's waste to energy. And now, closing the loop, I've come forward to say we
The Lagos
shall
State government,
think of
through the
electronic
Ministry of
waste
the Environment and Water
convert them.
Resources, is taking a gigantic step in managing the vast deposits of electronic waste in the state with the signing of letter of intent with a company from the Netherlands for the establishment of a smelter plant in Lagos. This initiative is important in improving e-waste management in line with international best practices and the economy of the state.
So, signing this letter of intent is also a positive step for us as a state to handle our waste. But if you handle your waste positively, you are fixing the global ecosystem as per the environment. And municipal waste is key. Electronic waste is key. We're not talking about it. But it's an integral part of the waste system. And I'm glad we did a lot of projects with Netherlands. Harvest waste is taking up a major leg of it for us. That's waste to energy. And now, closing the loop, I've come forward to say we shall take up electronic waste and convert them to waste.
The improper management can affect the environment badly. Lagos generates 13,000 tons of waste daily. 1/3 of the waste will now be converted to waste to wealth, another 1/3 goes to waste to value, while the last part is converted to waste to energy.
I strongly believe that the government and the agencies in charge, they are going to be buckle up and make sure that they tidy up the streets. Don't allow the street to be, littered with waste. And then now, even the waste is now, they're talking about the issue of waste to wet now. So there are so many benefits that they can derive. The only thing is that when you have resources enough to transform what we are taking as waste even to wealth.
Recycling e-waste not only helps to conserve energy, but it also recycles natural resources like copper, silver, and aluminium. Many of the metals used in our gadgets are rare earth metals that are in limited supply. When they are recycled, they can be reused instead of having to mine for new supplies. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Mwili.
In the west of the African continent, we tell you that the office of the medical charity Doctors Without Borders came under fire during an attack on the town of Djibo in northern Burkina Faso. According to the NGO, the building bears visible bullet holes and medical structures belonging to the Ministry of Health, supported by MSF, and a water distribution site have been vandalized, but its teams and patients were unharmed. MSF condemned the violence and called for respect for humanitarian spaces. Djibo is close to the so-called three-border zone between Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali, where jihadist groups are active. The town has been under siege for almost 2 years. And elsewhere, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa committed his new coalition government to growth, job creation and poverty reduction as he opened parliament following the first elections in which his ruling ANC lost its absolute majority. Addressing a joint sitting of the two houses of parliament after a grand opening ceremony, Ramaphosa also listed tackling the high cost of living and cutting red tape among his administration's goals. He also promised business-friendly reforms such as an overhaul of the graft reading public service and to massively increase investment in infrastructure.
Committed to improve the well-being of our country and its people through inclusive growth, the creation of jobs, and the reduction of poverty. The Government of National Unity has resolved to dedicate the next 5 years to actions that will advance, firstly, to drive inclusive growth and job creation. Secondly, to reduce poverty and tackle the high cost of living. And thirdly, to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state.
Fewer than a dozen presidential hopefuls have submitted their candidacy for Algeria's upcoming election, including the incumbent president Abdelmadjid Tebboune, who remains the front-runner. Tebboune, who was elected in 2019 following months of pro-democracy protests that led to the ousting of longtime President Abdelaziz Bouteflika, announced last week that he would seek a second term. He announced in March that the election will be held on September 7, 3 months ahead of schedule, but gave no reason for the decision.
سنلتزم بالدفاع عن الحريات الفردية والجماعية وإلغاء القوانين الجائرة المقيدة لها، لا سيما المادة 87 مكرر، طارحين بقوة حتمية إطلاق سراح معتقلي الرأي، وسنعمل على خلق مناخ من الثقة بين الجزائريات والجزائريين.
قدمنا التوقيعات المطلوبة كما يطلبها وكل وثائق المرفقة. الشيء اللي نقدر نقوله هو أنه المشاركة تاعنا في الانتخابات الرئاسية هي مشاركة تسمح للبلاد أنها حقيقة تغير نموذج الحوكمة في بلادنا وتبني دولة.
From other continents, we tell you that a widespread global outage has forced various businesses, including banks, airlines, telecom providers, broadcast networks, and supermarkets, to cease online operations. Report indicates that major U.S. airlines such as Delta, United, and American Airlines experienced a system-wide ground stop on Friday morning due to a technical communication issue. In the UK, Go via Thameslink Railways, 4 brands, Southern and Thameslink, including Gatwick Express and Great Northern, reported widespread IT failures impacting their services. Australia's Telstra Group, a telecommunications company, has also faced disruptions. Sky News reportedly went off air briefly in the UK due to the outages, leaving viewers without access to its broadcast. According to The Guardian UK, the widespread outage has been linked to issues with Windows workstations. Microsoft 365 users experienced difficulties accessing cloud-based apps on Friday, according to The Guardian UK. Earlier, IT system administrator Emmanuel Arondu spoke to us on this development.
Stems from the fact that most of these businesses and organizations rely on third-party software for their cybersecurity. And such, when you rely on third-party software, you are at the mercy of those third-party services and all their services that they would deploy, their updates. So this dependency on third-party software creates these vulnerabilities in the sense that if the third-party software that your service relies heavy on has any problem or a faulty update, as this case would be, you would be grounded. And mitigating against this would be very tricky, except your service provider has rectified it on their own end. You would be stuck in limbo and have to wait for them to profile a fix.
We talk business now. The Nigerian government says the importation of refined petroleum products into Nigeria is going to continue alongside the production of the commodities by the Dangote Petroleum Refinery to prevent monopoly and ensure energy security. The government warned against being over-dependent on the $20 billion refinery located in the Lekki Free Zone in Lagos, stressing that the demand by the refinery that all oil marketers should buy products from the plant does not support competition. This came as the House of Representatives constituted an ad hoc committee to probe allegations of non-supply of crude oil to the Dangote refinery as oil marketers condemned the international oil companies operating in Nigeria for not supplying crude to indigenous refiners. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission insisted that it was doing a lot to ensure the supply of crude to Dangote Refinery and other modular refinery operators, as it vowed to resolve the lingering crisis. We also tell you that Cocoa Board, Ghana's cocoa marketing board, achieved a significant milestone by reporting a profit of 2.3 billion cedis. That's about $149.84 million in the 2022-2023 fiscal year. This marked a turnaround after 6 consecutive years of losses, and it was largely attributed to the successful restructuring of $30 billion in debt, which was necessary to implement a $3 billion IMF program. The profit was driven by several factors, including reduced financing costs, higher global cocoa prices, increased bean sales, currency stability, and improved cost management. Patrick Abankwa, a financial analyst and investment advisor, provided insights on the significance of the debt restructuring for Cocoa Board's return to profitability and whether it is sustainable in the long run.
Round of event for Cocoa Board for a number of reasons. I think the first reason is that a lower total debt amount translates into less money spent on interest payments. And when that happens, it frees significant resources that can be allocated towards one. They have enough funds to be able to provide better access to fertilizer, training, and disease control measures to boost cocoa production for their farmers. The second thing is that it also gives them enough revenue or funds to invest in improved transportation network within the cocoa growing regions, which will also have a direct impact on efficient movement of the beans that they actually plant for them to be able to export for revenue. Again, they'll have enough funds to commit some quota into research into new cocoa varieties that are more disease resistant and higher yielding abilities. Then again, you can also look at a lower debt level, making Cocoa Board more attractive to borrowers in future and potentially helping them.
In sports, Everton have completed a signing of Nigeria international forward Tony Payne. The 29-year-old, who can play across the front line, joins the club after a 6-year spell in Spain with Sevilla and is the first signing of the summer for Brian Sorensen's side. Payne, who has 21 caps for Nigeria, was part of the Super Eagles squad that competed at the 2023 World Cup finals in Australia and New Zealand, being narrowly beaten by England in the last 16. Payne says her experience of playing against some of the best talent in the English top flight alone added to a desire to move to the Merseyside. And we wrap with this. Japanese gymnast Shoko Miyata has been disqualified from competing in the Olympic Games after violating a team smoking ban. The 19-year-old captain of Japan's women's artistic gymnastics team left the training camp in Monaco amid investigations into the incident. Officials confirmed she breached the Japan Gymnastics Association's rules, leading to her immediate return to Japan. Having won a bronze medal at the 2022 World Championships, Miyata was poised to lead a team of debutantes aiming for Japan's first artistic gymnastics team medal since the 1964 Tokyo Games in Paris. And that's all at this hour, but before we go, we take a look at some of our major stories. Senator Ndume declines chairmanship of Senate committee, stands by his words. Nigerian Army says 263 Boko Haram members surrender at Nigeria-Cameroon border. Finally, we told you that Office of Medical Charity, Doctors Without Borders targeted in armed attack in Burkina Faso. Don't forget to send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number and email on your screen. And you can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. And you can equally watch us live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Arvo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekan Onabanjo.